Good evening, and welcome to this debate with the candidates for the mayor of the city of Bismarck, Isaac Afokwa, Steve Bakken, and Mike Seminary. This evening's debate takes place in the Russell Reed Auditorium in the North Dakota Heritage Center and has been organized by the League of Women Voters and Dakota Media Access in partnership with the Bismarck Tribune, Bismarck-Mandan Home Builders Association, Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce, and Bismarck-Mandan Board of Realtors. My name is Caitlin McDonald, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I will be your moderator this evening. Joining me on stage tonight to put questions to the candidates are League of Women Voter members Rebecca Thiem and Kim Wynn. Our purpose this evening is to provide voters with information about the candidates and their positions on issues that affect the citizens of Bismarck, North Dakota. The candidates have not received any questions in advance, and the first responses to questions will be rotated between the candidates. Tonight's debate format is as follows. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to make an opening statement, and after opening statements, the candidates will respond to questions from our panelists. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. After all candidates have responded to the question, we invite them to engage in crosstalk, a dialogue about the issue raised, for no more than 3 minutes. We then encourage all candidates to participate, and any candidate may begin in the crosstalk segment. After the final question of the evening, each candidate will then have 60 seconds to make a closing statement. Candidates are asked to comply with our time restrictions so that we can get to as many questions as possible. Our timer tonight is Anessa Pfeiffer-Johnson, and she will let you know when your question responses are down to 30 seconds, then 10 seconds, and then stop. For the crosstalk segment, she will indicate when we are down to 1 minute and then stop. This is intended to be a respectful exchange of ideas and to provide the candidates with the best opportunity to discuss the important issues without distraction. So we ask the audience here tonight to please reserve applause until the debate has ended and understand that cheering or jeering from the audience will not be allowed. So now let's get to our candidates. Each of you will now have 60 seconds to make an opening statement. Pastor Afokwa, you may go first with your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you very much for hosting us, and every one of you that is here today. I want to say that folks that are on Facebook, you are welcome. I'm a pastor. My name is Isaac Afokwa. I am running for mayor of Bismarck, this great, wonderful city. I am a native of Ghana and a proud American. I am glad to be a citizen of this great city, Bismarck. Our city deserves a visionary, a leader, one that has what is called, one that is ready to listen, that has an open ear, open door, a leader that has the ability to advocate, a leader that has what it takes to see to the future of his generation, a leader that is able to organize and bring administrators together, citizens of the city together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary, your opening statement.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event, and thank you for attending. I love Bismarck and all the people that I serve. Recently, one of them said to me, the city is 95% perfect. I agree with that. The last 4 years, Bismarck has been highly rated nationally for how safe it is, how well run it is, affordable. It's a fantastic place to start a business, raise a family. To get to 100%, it will require that we collectively, in partnership, address these issues: homelessness, transit, behavioral health and addiction, and that we agree on a funding mechanism that is conservative, sustainable, fair, and equitable for our growing city's infrastructure needs. And we need a mayor that is experienced at leading the city. And that's why I am running, and I ask for your support this June. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bakken, your opening statement.
I was in broadcasting for 34 years. That afforded me the opportunity to be a good listener, and I think that's part of what we need right now in Bismarck. City government, to me, is about relationships and having the relationships with the community, both the county, the school district, our local legislators, business community, and the taxpayers of the community, the residents of the community. In my opinion, some of that's lacking right now. We need some better leadership to move forward with the city of Bismarck and take us in a direction that meshes with the values and the morals of being a Western city, and enjoying the opportunities that that has and make Bismarck the best Bismarck can be. Part of the reason that I'm running is to help facilitate that and move the city of Bismarck forward in a direction that meshes as a caretaker to the taxpayers of the community. Thank you very much for everybody who's in attendance today and everybody watching at home, and the League of Women Voters for putting this on.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our questions. Our first question will be presented by Rebecca Thiem and will be first answered by Mayor Seminary.
Good evening. As Bismarck's population grows, what are your ideas to work toward future development that is sustainable?
First of all, the city does have a growth management plan that is in place. We are engaged as we speak with very productive conversations with our development community and all stakeholders. One of the things we have to be conscious about is as we grow our city's footprint, the costs for all of us go up forever. So that we must then make sure that what we're doing is fair, equitable, sustainable, and fair for everyone. And I believe the discussions that we're having will lead to that. Additionally, we just hired a consultant to help us determine what are the fair rate structures that we should enact, if any, in the city as we grow. And that's exactly what we need to be doing now.
Thank you. Mr. Bakken?
You know, when you look at the footprint of Bismarck, I think we've failed a little bit in that long-term planning, that long-term vision of the city of Bismarck. If you take a look at the city map, it is one of the most gerrymandered maps I've ever seen in my life. That doesn't afford long-term growth that's successful. You wind up with a lot of ad hoc projects, and ad hocing anything is expensive. That causes extra cost, incurs extra cost for the taxpayers. We need to build a level playing field for the business community and let the business community and private investment grow the community of Bismarck. It needs to be organic, and if it's not organic, it's not going to be successful. Part of doing that is having those relationships that I mentioned earlier. When you have the better relationships and everybody on the same page, the city of Bismarck can function better within the community of the county, the state, our neighbors across the river, and everybody's more successful. It's a heavy lift. We've got a lot of things on our plate that need to be addressed in the city of Bismarck, and it's those cooperations and those relationships that have been lacking a little bit that are going to get us over that next step moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Afokwa?
Thank you. We have an issue here in Bismarck. Matching growth with infrastructure. Our city is growing daily. Every year we have Bismarck growing 16%. But infrastructure to hold it up is not doing well. I'm running because I have what it takes. And I believe that Bismarck can do better. I'm ready to help out and make Bismarck become great, and great one more time. I want to assure you that if I'm elected, I will bring in investors. I will encourage entrepreneurs to step up in this city to help us build it up together. What I do as a pastor every single day is talk to citizens in our community. All they are crying for is that they don't have the facilities they need. And as a result of that, the city is not doing the best it's supposed to. I believe that we can do better by coming together as one people and coming together as people that are being called in here in Bismarck to work ourselves together, bring in more people, encourage infrastructure growth, help with our schools, and also get more daycare centers worked out. Look at our homeless issues here in Bismarck. We must have a leader that will think. What I do every day as a pastor is to care for the needy, the poor, the sick, and also for the hungry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll now open this topic for crosstalk.
There is ongoing and consistent dialogue between city, county, school board, park district staff, continuous dialogue between members of the commission. You have to be conscious of this. We can only meet with so many without violating public meeting laws. We have an intergovernmental agency which is chaired by Commissioner Marquardt, where they meet on a regular basis, members of each one of those political subdivisions, to have productive discussions about what we must be doing collectively and together. With regards to the boundary of the city and the county, it's a negotiated boundary. The map that you see, and was referenced just moments ago, was negotiated between the city and the county commissions, and it's been in place. And one of the most important reasons for protecting that boundary for the city is, as the city grows, it must have control of its footprint. There are over 150 subdivisions outside of the ETA. As we grow, we have to be very protective of what the future costs could be as a result of the expansion and growth of the city on the future taxpayers. We take that very, very seriously, and it's one of the reasons we have a negotiated boundary between those two entities.
You know, that boundary comes up for discussion quite often, and if you follow the city commission meetings and the county commission meetings, it has been a bone of contention with the relationship with the county for quite a while now. That is an ongoing discussion that needs to be looked at, but the lack of long-term planning and that long-term 30, 40-year out vision, that causes a rub with the county. Bullying the county is not a solution for having a relationship. Yes, those discussions go on. We don't have the discussions, the relationship with our home builders, our business community. When you start having those discussions on a regular basis, instead of throwing them up at the last minute, instead of 4 years ago when they should have started taking place, then we have an issue in the city because we're not listening to the people who are economic drivers in the community. We're not listening to the taxpayers. We're not listening to the people who have to live in the city of Bismarck and want it to be a flourishing, thriving city. They have a voice, and they deserve to be heard.
Again, we have a negotiated boundary with the county. We work collaboratively all the time. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the county and the city. Work collaboratively with members of the county commission. We have an MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, where we work collaboratively all the time. Sometimes when someone looks inside of an organization without any real facts, it can be confusing, and your opinion could be somewhat tainted. But trust me when I say, we have a very good working relationship with staff and members of the commission, and the city must always protect its boundaries as well. Thank you.
We're out of time for crosstalk on that question. So we will move on to our next question, and this one will be answered first by Mr. Bakken.
The local transit and paratransit systems have made some recent changes to their routes and services that have resulted in problems and, in some cases, leaving people with disabilities without transportation options for jobs, church, and medical appointments. What ideas do you have for improving the transit systems and correcting these barriers?
Well, first of all, my thought is when you go outside of the resources of the city of Bismarck and the businesses who are part of the community and outsource to an agency that you're going to spend more money to have services provided, and then don't provide the services as well as that previous organization did or that previous business group did, that's where we have an issue. There has been problems with transit for quite a while. The issue isn't the fact that we currently have problems. There's always ongoing problems. It's the mechanism by which you work through those problems. When you sit down with those that ride transit, and quite often paratransit, those are the people that need to be listened to when you're making the decisions about how that operation should be run. Quite often, there's not that voice. They don't get that voice as well as they should. We need more communication, more openness, and more listening, frankly. It's about listening. You can't start solving problems until you sit down with everybody involved and listen to those issues. turning around and outsourcing to a company that's out of the country for a solution that we should be able to solve here in Bismarck is poor leadership.
Thank you. Pastor Afokwa.
Thank you. The issue here on our transportation system is very weak. It's very weak in the sense that it's not enough. The system in our city is growing daily. And if you don't have efficient transportation to get the people back and forth, they will tend to leave. Just a week ago, I talked to a member of a church, and she said to me, I'm relocating. I said, why are you doing that? He said, I don't have a car of my own, and transportation is becoming a problem. I think the best thing to do and the way to resolve this, get private sectors to get involved in our transportation system. Allow them to come in and do whatever they can so that we can have efficient transportation. We must also, as people and leaders, should be able to listen to people that we work with, people that are around our communities. If you go from one house to the other, which I've been doing, knocking at doors, and they tell me, even going out to vote, some of us may not have the opportunity to do it. And I felt that we should have done better with the resources we have here in Bismarck. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary.
Thank you for the question. First of all, Bismarck has a very unique transit system. It is operated by a board that has nothing to do with the city of Bismarck. They come to the city to request maybe changes in the route, but the board makes the decision on how to operate their system. The city provides funding for the buses and the building. We are not involved in the operation of the transit system and had absolutely nothing to do with their decision to hire their current provider. One thing we did do, because we were very concerned about this being so much about routes, systems, and far less about people, particularly people that desperately need transportation from point A to point B for livelihood, we said we're going to have someone from the commission represent the city on that transit board. And Commissioner Marquardt stepped up and made himself available to do that. We are very closely monitoring their progress and their operations. And we stand ready, if need be, to step in and make additional decisions to make sure that everyone is served humanely and properly. Thank you.
I'll open this topic for crosstalk.
You know, when you talk about being involved with funding buses, funding buildings, those are taxpayer dollars. There needs to be an accountability to that board. The issues that have just come up recently, if the commission is currently aware of them just coming up recently, have been around for a long time. Why is it a voice being heard going into an election cycle that finally gets paid attention to? The city is involved. The city is very involved when it comes to taxes. As long as we're supplying some of those buses, we're supplying that building, we're stakeholders. We have a very, very, very heavy fingerprint on city transit, and there needs to be some more accountability held to that board. I've talked to several of the paratransit users, and they're having job issues, they're having quality of life issues that aren't there because some of the decisions that new company has made, and that's at the behest of the board. You know, the board hires those people, and they need to hold those people to the fire. Who's the board accountable? They should be accountable to city leadership.
If I might add, again, the city does not operate the system, and almost every tax dollar provided to the system is from the federal government. Additionally, I've ridden the system. I've helped people on and off the system. We are very sensitive about those people that are particularly needy individuals, of what kind of service they're receiving. The city does not operate the system, and we communicate at length with them, and we do not interfere, nor should we ever interfere with any board's operations. That is their business. But again, the city stands ready to do what it must to make sure that all users of the system are provided in a humane and proper way. Thank you.
Pastor, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I want to say that we can do better. The mayor of the city should step up better when it comes to transportation. When the people surface, it all comes back to you. I won't be running, and I won't be standing here today if I don't see the need out there for this issue. It's very bad. It's very terrible. We must rise. And as a leader, you must step up and fight for the community. They need your help. They need your assistance. And if not, then I would advise maybe you want to think about it.
All right. Our next question will be answered first by Pastor Afokwa.
As the Bismarck area grows, we have more than 2,000 job openings to fill in Burleigh County. Our population is also becoming more culturally diverse. What are your ideas to attract and retain a new workforce?
Thank you. It's very important that we look at our workforce very critically. How are we paid hourly? A young lady that I talked about 2 weeks ago, she mentioned, and I felt bad about it. She pays rent of about $900 every month. She has 3 children, all by herself. And she gets paid $9 an hour. Who will stay and do such a job? And that is an issue. What I would do is to go around and talk to businesses that are in town, people that provide and have what it takes to get the city running, and that is businesses. And in order to do that, you have to call a meeting with them, negotiate with them, collaborate with them, and let them give them a little boost up there so that we can have more people come in and we'll have a better workforce in our community, Bismarck.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary, your answer.
I'm on the North Dakota Economic Development Foundation board appointed by the governor, and we spend a lot of time talking about talent attraction and retention across the state. I'm on the BMDA board. We have the same conversations. I'm on the North Dakota League of Cities board. We have the same conversations. I used to be on the chamber board. This has been a discussion, an important topic for some time. I am very invested in, first of all, Start Bismarck and A Million Cups, where we are lifting up our entrepreneurial system, the ecosystem where young people are taking advantage of everything that they can to make a difference and provide opportunities in the city. We collaborate all the time with BMDA and the Chamber to make sure that we put in the right types of channels of communication between educators at the Bismarck State College, the University of Mary, and other institutions to make sure that we can attract and retain as much talent as possible. And the last thing that we do is make sure that this is a community that is very welcoming of everyone, absolutely everyone. And that's what leaders do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bakken, your answer, please.
You know, it starts with where economic development starts is having a fair and equitable business climate. And when you start talking about a fair and equitable business climate, that's across the entire city, across our entire region. You can't focus on just one area and pick winners and losers as government. When you start looking at retaining jobs, well, you have to start about growing jobs first. The discussion to grow jobs is that entrepreneurial spirit, having new businesses start up, having businesses grow because they hire more people. That doesn't work for just one little part of the city. That's got to be across the entire city. When you focus on one area of town, that's not good for the entire tax base for the city because one area is not going to carry the burden. We have to have a business climate and work with our business leaders and have that relationship with the businesses out there and have that relationship with higher education and K-12 education to grow those students, grow that workforce, and then continue to keep that workforce in our community. That's where we're successful. How do you do that? Well, you have that fair business climate across the board because if you don't have everybody successful, whether it's North Bismarck, South Bismarck, East Bismarck, or downtown, then we're not going to be successful as a community. We have to have everybody doing their part.
Thank you. We'll now open this topic for crosstalk.
The city of Bismarck is totally agnostic when it comes to where development takes place. It does not pick winners and losers. It does use tools for economic development provided to every city across the state by the state legislature. While we have focused those tools downtown because that's where we're allowed to use them, at the same time, the city, because of the policies that we've had in place for decades, has underwritten development to the tune of about $46 million for the last 6 years on the fringe. We're agnostic. We want to provide opportunities for developers, for builders, for educators, for millennials, for young entrepreneurs. We don't care where they live or where they operate. We are concerned about the core of downtown because every ecosystem must have a core. But we are agnostic about where we provide opportunities. We want them everywhere in the city. Thank you.
But when you have opportunities that focus on one specific area of town, that's putting government in the position of picking winners and losers. Everybody needs to be successful, but everybody needs to have skin in the game. If I have a business that I'm going to start either downtown or up north or down south or in the eastern part of the city, but I'm going to have an incentive to be able to operate that business, I need to look at my business plan. If my business plan requires an incentive, a subsidy for it to work, I've got a bad business plan. I can go to the bank. They're not going to loan me the money for the plan. But the city will. The city will make sure that you have your little economic boost for a short period of time. That's not job creation long term because that business, you need to look at the business plan. It's more than likely not going to be a successful business that's going to last that 5 years. And that's where we fail as a city.
Again, the city uses the tools made available by the state legislature, and we do that fairly. If we're making reference to the Renaissance Zone, here's what the Renaissance Zone has done. It's literally created several hundred jobs, over 130 projects. It's increased the property tax base downtown to over $65 million, and it has been very successful. I suspect that if a business like that came to the city of Bismarck, we would with open arms welcome it. All we have done is use the tools made available to the city, like every other city in the state of North Dakota, that the legislature grants us to use.
Just because there's tools there doesn't make them the right tools and the right way to do business for long-term prosperity. Just because a tool is in the toolbox doesn't mean it's the right tool. Should you be using a wrench when you should be using a screwdriver? Not always.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. This next question will be answered first by Mayor Seminary.
What needs to be done in order to achieve a long-term solution to homelessness in Bismarck?
Homelessness in the city of Bismarck is like almost every other city. In Bismarck, one of the differences is the city isn't actually involved in terms of funding mechanisms to address homelessness. We participate through a variety of groups. Homelessness is first and foremost addressed by nonprofit organizations that are doing a magnificent job. One of the things the city could do, we could look at specific zoning ordinances to try to establish an area where multiple services could be provided so it's easier for those that are looking for services to take advantage of them. One thing that I have done, I formed the Mayor's Gold Star Community Task Force, 3 mayors, the 3 cities. We have over 35 agencies, department heads, state representatives involved in how we can collectively solve not just that issue, but also the behavioral health and addiction issues that are crippling families, taking lives, and impacting our city. And homelessness is part of that discussion. We also have commissioners that are very vested in making sure that we have a solution. And I tip my hat to Commissioner Nancy Guy. She is invested, and she will be part of the solution to that very important civic problem.
Mr. Bakken, your answer, please.
You know, charity begins at home. Those nonprofit organizations, churches, the community of Bismarck, much more prepared and better suited for the solutions that need to be out there for the homeless issue. When you start looking at the $10,000 the city gave to the homeless crisis, When we knew that Ruth Myers was changing their mission, the discussion should have happened back then, last year, about what are we going to do over the winter, not at the last minute trying to help out by giving $10,000. That money would have been better suited in a long-term plan. And frankly, it's not the job of taxpayers to be paying those solutions. Again, charity starts at home. We as a community can come together and solve that problem. It's not the job of the taxpayers to pay for every issue that comes up. When you start looking at the mechanisms by which those solutions are operated, government's not in the job and not set up to handle those situations. Nonprofits are. And thank God for United Way for stepping up to the plate as much as they have. They've done a wonderful job. But is that long term? Probably not.
Thank you. Pastor Afokwa.
Thank you. Homelessness is killing our city. To be passionate and have compassion for our brothers and sisters that come to town, we most of the time declare, well, they don't want to work, and therefore, if we give them a place to stay, then they will take advantage of that. I think we are not doing the right thing. As a community, we need to come together as one people and handle that situation. You see, I talked to Jenna about a week ago, and I was there. We went for a tour and everything, and I saw his situation. The city gives 10,000. The county gives 6,000. That is not the best way to go about it. I feel that the city could have done better. If you need to encourage someone to move forward, you want to support in every area, in every aspect of it. You have to consult. If you have to consult churches, talk to entrepreneurs. That issue could have been solved better than what it is today. I feel that we can work together as one people and take care of that issue quickly. Right now, they are looking about 14 rooms, and it's not right. In a winter time, it was terrible. I have to personally put some people that I pick up on the street in a hotel because I'm a pastor. They come around and they call and say, what are we doing, Pastor? Can you help us out? And I can't just throw them out. I have to find a place for them. But when I get a chance, I'll make sure that issue is taken care of.
Thank you. And we'll now open this topic for crosstalk.
I feel that what we use this city, the taxpayers' money to do, sometimes we place them in a wrongful way. I feel that the homelessness should have been our number one priority. Look into it. If we love the people around us, and if our community will be a community that cares, there shouldn't be homelessness around. People are all over the place. They are suffering. Some of them are going through drug problems. We understand, we know. And each and every one of us here today, one or somebody else in your family might be involved. And that is why I am running. What I do as a pastor daily is to care for the need. To care for the needy, the hungry, the sick, and the poor. And when I become a mayor, I will make sure that our homeless fellows don't go through those troubles anymore.
Bad things happen to good people, and there's a myriad of situations that people get into. It's not just addiction issues. Sometimes, it's education. It is job situations. Things change. The charitable side of this with the homeless issue is about a hand up. I mean, that's what we're really good at in North Dakota. That's what makes this state so great. That's what makes this community so great. It's about that hand up, not a handout. It's not about the taxpayers paying for issues. It's about the community coming together and raising up somebody who's in a bad situation. Quite often, it's some little things, some nuances that can help change somebody's life and get them out of that situation. But that's part of the community. That's part of the church. That's part of who we are as people of North Dakota and people of Bismarck, not a government job. to fix somebody's life. So it is about a hand up, not a handout.
I am incredibly proud of the role the city has played through the individual efforts of commissioners, and literally every one of them. I'm incredibly proud of the Mayor's Gold Star Community Task Force and the work that it's doing with all the providers and all those in the faith community to address this problem and try to find the best solution possible. We are a great community. We are people that love everyone here. I love everyone I serve. And again, I am particularly proud of the work and the effort of Commissioner Nancy Guy. She has invested a lot of time and soul and energy working on this matter. Thank you.
All right. We'll be moving on to our next question, and this one will be answered first by Mr. Bakken.
What are the challenges our local law enforcement faces in dealing with behavioral health and addiction issues, and how should city government assist in dealing with these challenges?
You know, when you start looking at some of the issues that the law enforcement's dealing with, it's not the numbers, the crime statistics that you're looking at that have increased. The last study I read, I think we're about 97% higher than the average city in the city of in the state of North Dakota. It's not necessarily about the number of crimes; it's the types of crimes that they're dealing with: the prostitution, the human trafficking, the addiction, and the drugs that are out on the streets. We just had an issue a couple weeks ago, a business that was busted downtown for illicit drugs. The policing within the community is difficult at best, but when you're lacking some of those resources, then you start exacerbating some of those problems. We do have a lot of crime in Bismarck, and some of that's just percentages of growth. But to me, it's the types of crimes that we're having to deal with, that our law enforcement is having to deal with. It's not little Johnny throwing a rock and breaking a window anymore. That's not the norm. The level of crimes has increased, and a lot of it starts with some behavioral issues. A lot of it starts with addiction issues, but they need the resources. Law enforcement needs some help.
Thank you. Pastor Afokwa.
Thank you. When we are looking at behavioral issues here in Bismarck, crime is all over the place. When a city grows, it comes with all kinds of stuff, all over the place. And as a result of that, we need to empower police force. And I will say that we have to be able to employ more police officers and get them all equipped effectively to handle all of these crimes. In our community, we don't see a lot of them. You come to downtown, you'll be a bunch of them. But when you go outskirts of downtown, that is when you look at it and see that there are no police force around. And I feel that we could do better. We're using city taxes to solve some of these things, but it would have been better if we employ more and equip them, get more gadgets for them, and help them, support them in any way possible as a city. I feel that the office of the mayor should have done better helping out with this particular issue. It's actually very bad, and I feel that it should be taken care of.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary, your answer, please.
The behavioral health and addiction crisis everywhere is also here. And it is taxing not just law enforcement professionals, but also our healthcare industry. Our emergency rooms are overtaxed with people that are coming in that are causing havoc in emergency rooms. That's one of the reasons I formed the Mayor's Gold Star Community Task Force. It's also one of the reasons that Lieutenant Dan Donlin, Chief, suggested that we put in the Power Patrol, where we added 6 additional officers at the key times of the day to add support to those that are already there. It's also one of the reasons that at the time I've been a mayor and a commissioner, we have made sure that we invest in our law enforcement professionals, because that is our number one responsibility, public safety. Our law enforcement professionals are doing a masterful job of dealing with a very difficult situation, behavioral health and addiction issues. And they are doing the best job possible, teaming with the medical community to prevent even further crisis. And I will agree about one thing. We don't want law enforcement professionals to be babysitters. We need them focusing on other matters in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open this topic for crosstalk.
You know, part of dealing with law enforcement and having a plan in place for long-term growth with what law enforcement has to deal with, having a good mental health piece, working with our local hospitals and our local communities, working with our churches, our community, our charitable organizations. That's all part of mental health. It's all pieces to the puzzle. But when you have turnover at the rate we do with the Bismarck Police Department, that doesn't lend itself well to continuing education for law enforcement. Having law enforcement officers that are integral parts of the community, whether they've moved on or just left law enforcement, you know, we have a retention problem with law enforcement. And a lot of that is when you don't retain long-term law enforcement individuals, they don't know the community as well. You run into situations that arise because of a lack of familiarity, and that's something that we need to work on as a community in the city of Bismarck, is that long-term retention for law enforcement, because it layers across everything else and helps cover the mental health issues, helps cover all the crime issues. You know, law enforcement needs some help, and we need to get a handle on why there's a lack of retention with law enforcement.
Law enforcement is likely the most difficult profession on the planet today. And we've all seen examples across the country, the level of disrespect for law enforcement professionals, the way they're challenged. It happens here too. There isn't a more stressful job than being a law enforcement professional. You leave for work in the morning, you don't know if you're coming back home. You kiss your wife or your kids goodbye in the morning, you don't know if you're going to see them again. It is stressful. There is turnover. And we have professionals in that department, led by the chief, that are doing a masterful job. We do everything possible to give the support the law enforcement professionals need. Yes, some of them leave because it is an incredibly difficult, stressful job. It is life-threatening. And I thank God every single day for the law enforcement professionals in our community, serving all of us, even those that are causing them or likely will cause them harm. I thank God for them every single day.
Standing in solidarity with outside agitators and protesters is not an example of supporting law enforcement. When we have issues that come up in the community, they need every bit of support that we and leadership in this community can give them.
I stand for the law enforcement professionals every single day.
Thank you. We're out of time with that question. We'll move on to our next question, and this one will be answered first by Pastor Afokwa.
What might be ramifications to the city budget of further cuts to state agency budgets, including transportation, human services, health care, and others, as proposed by Governor Burgum?
Thank you. Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Sure. What might be ramifications to the city budget of further cuts to state agency budgets, including transportation, human services, health care, and others, as proposed by Governor Burgum?
Okay, thank you. The issue here that we are dealing with is that I mentioned it earlier, the way the city taxpayers' money is being used is being placed in the wrongful place. And that is the reason why you have to do everything to cut budget and make sure you're able to fix the issue at stake as far as finances are concerned. I feel that it will be better off if we are able to, for example, we have hijack tax on property taxes. just to offset certain costs and certain debts that the city is handling right now. I feel that we have to do the best we can by providing, maybe you want to raise tax a little bit on sales tax, maybe 2 cents or 1 cent, in order to be able to balance the budget on our finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary.
My initial concern with the governor's proposal, which I understand, by the way, is it will likely impact us in 2 different areas. One, transportation with regards to how we repair, fix roads, and the fuel tax that we get, how might that be impacted? But also, maybe more importantly, is what it might do in terms of impacts to public health. And if we have significant impacts, it's premature to try to predict now. The commission will have to look at the budget and see where can we make appropriate adjustments. The majority of property taxes we collect that go into the general fund, the overwhelming majority go for law enforcement, firefighting, and emergency communications. And the budget is tight. It is very tight. Those are important needs in our community, every community in the state. And at the appropriate time, we would sit down and start looking at that. Commissioner Marquardt has the budget portfolio. He will more than likely be calling staff together soon to start examining that. It's premature at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bakken, your answer.
When you start looking at some of the cuts from the governor's budget and how that affects Bismarck, you have to look at the snapshot back 5-10 years ago. State government has been grown to excess. City government has been grown as well. To what excess is debatable. But that's going to play directly in on our property tax issues, our infrastructure issues. We need to start looking at some of the other ways that we can do that. Running right away to go do taxes, raise taxes, is not a solution. There are many other solutions that can be put into place, and some of it's incremental. It's a piece here and a piece there and a piece here, and when all the pieces come together, then you got a pretty good picture and a pretty good handle on things. One solution, running to raise taxes, not the solution. But from the growth of city government, there's a lot of efficiencies that can take place. We can start communicating a little bit better between departments, within departments, government services that overlap, and where we overlap with state services as well. That's where we need to start looking at, is some of these efficiencies to start saving money off of our budget and out of our tax dollars.
Thank you. We'll now open this topic for crosstalk.
Sometimes the city budget can be confusing for some people. The general fund, which is, again, where your property taxes are put into, it's about $47 million. The total budget is about $130. It's actually about $127 million. The majority of that general fund is spent on law enforcement professionals. Interestingly enough, since I've been mayor, the general fund has only increased 2.6% annually. The first thing we do every year is look where we can have efficiencies. We look at where we can make cuts. We have not raised property taxes 1 penny since I have been the mayor. We have, again, through Commissioner Marquardt's efforts, utilized the mills from sales tax and conservative approaches to the budget extremely well, and I'm very proud of the team effort.
When you start looking at some of those efficiencies and where our tax dollars goes, you look at not listening to the voters. That's a big cost right there. When the voters and the taxpayers say no to a civic center expansion and $37 million comes out of the budget towards it, $8 million on Quiet Rail. Do we know the costs of that 5 South debacle yet? No, we don't. But I know there's a strip mall down there that prior was cash flowing and is now not generating money because the city owns it. The city's not in the job of being landlords. That's not their issue. We had a grant for a pedestrian pathway. We've got bike lanes. I've got a bike lane down by my house, and I live in South Bismarck. We've got a bike lane on Wachter. A block to the south, we have a park district bike path that is immaculately clean and usable all year round. The bike lane on Wachter isn't, because the gravel doesn't get cleaned off during the winter, nor should it. It's a road. You know, there's a bike path a block south, but we spend money on a special project. You know, when you start talking about the efficiencies of government and where we can start saving money and where there's bloat, we need to look inside at some of those issues. Those are special projects, and special projects cost a lot of taxpayer dollars.
I rarely want to correct anybody, but when you are so off on your numbers that it's almost laughable, I must. Mr. Bakken is wrong on Quiet Rail. He is wrong on the event center by great, great margin.
$37 million on the event center is still taxpayer dollars. I don't care where the money came from, it's still taxpayer dollars. For an event that we have once every other year.
The number was $27 million.
And we're out of time for crosstalks on that question. Our next question will be answered first by Mayor Seminary.
Please identify and discuss one specific area where you think we need improvement in city government.
Clearly, communications is brought up a lot. And I have asked staff to develop communications protocol, which is appropriate for the times in which we live. We do communicate the way we are supposed to via the Century Code, but that's not enough. Those are just doing the requirements. We must do what is necessary. And that will be difficult, because one of the requirements for adjusting the protocol is how can you do it without costing any more money? But it is something we must find a way to do. We are very transparent, and we want to make sure that we are delivering information to as many audiences as possible by the way that they take information today.
Thank you. Mr. Bakken.
Yeah, I will say communication as well, and to me that starts with leadership. When you don't have communication within city government, within departments, across departments, communication with the county, communication with our business leaderships, communication with the parts of our community that live in the community, that grow in the community, then we have issues. We need to have those discussions in that open form of communication with our builders, with our labor force, with our residents who pay taxes, with every aspect of the city of Bismarck, and they all have a voice. It's not always listened to, but they all have a voice. And because you're a resident of the city of Bismarck, you deserve to be heard. So communication is one of the biggest issues I think that we have in the city of Bismarck, and lack thereof. How do you fix that? Start opening up the doors. You know, it's about accountability. It's about open lines of communication. It's about transparency. Having the discussion is where solutions start. And the less voices that you have in a discussion, the less likely you are to get the solution.
Thank you. Pastor Fuqua.
Thank you. There's a lot of issues here in the city, and communication is one. I feel that it's better if we're able to communicate with community leaders, bring them all of them together, business entrepreneurs all together, think about how best we can get our city moving forward. Education has become a great concern personally. And as a result of that, I'm running for mayor, not for a school board position, but I feel that we can also collaborate with the school board to make sure that our children, who are our future, our future leaders, are taken care of. our school system, when you go to the primary schools, you find out that it's over jam-packed. You also look at the daycare centers. It's becoming a waiting list thing. And I remember when we first came to town, my little girl had to stay home for 5 months before she can get a daycare. And this has become a big issue here in our city, and I feel that it should be addressed. The Amtrak issue here is a big problem, and I feel that all of that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open this topic for crosstalk. All right. Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you, candidates. That was our last question for this evening. You will now each have 60 seconds to provide a closing statement, and we will begin these closing statements with Mr. Bakken.
You know, one of the things I think we need from a leadership standpoint for the city of Bismarck is a culture change. We've got a culture of city government running the city administration running the city for 25 plus years, and I don't think they've done it well. There's a lack of accountability to the taxpayers. There's a lack of accountability to the residents of Bismarck. We need that accountability. We need that transparency in government. We need long-term planning, not 2, 5, 10 years, but 30, 40, 50 years. One of the things that didn't get addressed is the affordable housing issue. That, you're talking specials, and we had a situation where we had a family get pushed out of their house because of specials, $56,000. Hey, well, you're going to have to move. And thank heavens for a developer that stepped up and took care of that because it was his development that was part of that issue. We need to make Bismarck the best Bismarck it can be, not look to some other city and other direction. We need to make Bismarck the best.
Thank you. Pastor Afokwa.
Thank you. I am running for mayor because there's a great concern in our city. And it has to take somebody to step up. One with the right quality and right leadership skills. I've been a pastor for the past 27 years, and I see the need all over the place. I founded a group called Youth in Action. All we were doing was visiting the homeless shelters, feeding them, and making sure that they are doing all right. And also visiting our prisons in Columbus, Ohio. I did that for over 7 years. Listen, we have an issue here, and that issue has to be handled. And we have to look into it right away. We can't continue to procrastinate. We can't continue to say that, well, we'll do it tomorrow. When you vote for me today, I will get it done. So give me more time. There is no time. Bismarck needs progress now. Bismarck must be great again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Seminary, your closing statement, please.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this together, all of you for attending, and the debate here with my two opponents. I am the positive, proven public servant that has led this city with vision very successfully the past 4 years. The national polls knock it out of the park. And here's one that you probably would find most interesting. Moody's is likely the global expert on city finances. They give us a thumbs up on how conservatively and how well we have managed your money. They give us a AA1 rating. We are 90, 95% perfect. We can achieve 100%, but it will take an experienced person that understands how to lead a city like Bismarck. That's why I'm running. I'm Mike Seminary, I'm the mayor, and I look forward to your vote and support in the June election. Thank you very much, and thank you for attending.
Thank you. Thanks again to our candidates, and also thanks to our panelists and timer for this evening, the League of Women Voters and Dakota Media Access for organizing this debate, and of course our partners, the Bismarck Tribune, the Bismarck-Mandan Home Builders Association, the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce, and the Bismarck-Mandan Board of Realtors. This recorded program will replay several times on government access television, cable channels 2 and 602 in the days leading up to the June 12th election, and will also be available for online viewing at freetv.org. Thank you so much to the viewers at home and the audience members here tonight at Russell Reed Auditorium for taking the time to learn about these important issues and our candidates for the mayor of the city of Bismarck. Before we close this forum, I want to remind you that voting in North Dakota is very simple, and you can find voting information at your county auditor's office and from the office of the North Dakota Secretary of State. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.